Blog Talk Radio.
The purple angel, oh purple angel, you're next to me. Purple angel, oh purple angel, you're next to me. You're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am thrilled to have you with us here today. It's going to be an exciting show. I'm really, really excited about the author that we have with us, Maggie La Tourelle, and she's written a fantastic book called The Gift of Alzheimer's, New Insights into the Potential of Alzheimer's and its Care. And that is just so dear to my heart because that is exactly how I view this disease and the journey I had with my own mom for 30 years. For those of you that are new to the show, I'm just going to take a brief moment here and explain a little bit about Alzheimer's Speaks Radio and Alzheimer's Speaks in general. I am the founder and host of the radio show, Lori LeBay, and I started this journey because of my mom, needless to say, and it's been a really powerful place for me to be, really healing, and I have learned so much from so many people around the world. I created Alzheimer's Speaks as an advocacy-based company to provide multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. I just truly felt and still feel today that, the best kind of cure for dealing with this and the best support available to us is one another, and that we need to connect. I believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations like we have here on the radio show about life with dementia, that's really the only way we're going to be able to remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help those living with the disease continue to live with purpose along with those that care for them. Together we can help everyone understand the true needs of this disease and again, get rid of the fear and the isolation that just penetrates people and isolates them so bad from one another. At our core, we believe, again, collaboration is the only way that we're going to win the battle. And I know that it's working because of all of you and your likes and your clicks and your shares with your Facebook friends, with your Google circles, with your LinkedIn colleagues, your Twitter tribes, etc. Every time you like us, you are pushing information out to others so that it's there when they're ready for it. We never know when someone is going to need this information, but we do know that more people need it than are willing to accept it. And if we look at ourselves, we know why that is. It's pretty common for all of us to play that role of not wanting to be cared for and wanting to be able to do things independently. And so it's just very critical that we have information out there that makes people feel comfortable. And so through your likes, through your shares, we were able to be named the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz, which was absolutely incredible. Really a fantastic place for us to be, and we are so honored. And again, we know we did not do that alone. The only way we did that was with you and through you. You allowed us to have this position in the world, which we're so honored to be able to connect those all around. Now, we would really encourage you to join the conversation, and you can do that through the chat box, which I'm having a little bit of problem with right now, so I'm going to see if I can get that back up and running. And but you can also call in, And when you call in, you just have to call 714-364-4757. That's 714-364-4757. And when you do that, you'll have to push 1 to get into kind of my waiting room, and I will pull you into the conversation, I promise, because, again, it's all about raising everyone's voice on our show here. So with that, I want to give a couple of shout-outs before we get moving along here and get into just I know it's going to be just an entrenched, exciting, and uplifting conversation with Maggie. But I always like to give a shout-out to a few different organizations. First and foremost, I have to mention the Purple Angel Project. If you are not aware of it, it is the new global symbol. Anybody can utilize this symbol, business or individual. All you have to do is read a short little poster that talks about what it's like to have dementia. And the Purple Angel isn't about having all the answers. It's about raising awareness, showing the symbol, people asking, what is that about? We want the Purple Angel to be as well known as the pink ribbon is for breast cancer, and there's absolutely no reason that can't happen. You can go to our About page on AlzheimersSpeaks.com for that information. If you're looking for an Alzheimer's Association anywhere in the world, go to Alzheimer's Disease International. There you'll not only find the one closest to you, but you'll also find great global information and research that's being done. I want to give a shout-out to HealthStar Home Health, who I do a lot of work with here in Minnesota. Fabulous home health company that's actually trained their staff with the Alzheimer's Whisperer program. And they just really do a fantastic job. Last, I want to mention the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. They kind of take a holistic approach to things, and they do a wonderful job with food, diet, meditation, and just giving you, some other avenues. And I said that was last, and I lied. I want to also give a big shout out to the Alzheimer's team, who is helping advance Alzheimer's research. And you can actually enroll your loved one in a clinical trial. And I will put that link in the chat box as well. But it's very, very simple URL that you can go to. But they've got a great study. If you go to alzheimersstudy.com/60.htm. And again, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat box here for the Alzheimer's study. Great resource. We need to be able to do these studies in order to find a cure. And so we need participants to be part of that. So let me go ahead and introduce to you our author today. Our timing couldn't have been any better because Maggie's book, which I'm holding right in my hand right now, called The Gift of Alzheimer's, New Insights into the Potential of Alzheimer's and Its Care, is being launched here in the U.S. today. So how exciting is that? This is a woman, Maggie La Tourelle, is a writer, she's a therapist, she's a teacher, and she has worked in the field of holistic health care for over 30 years, integrating psychotherapy and energetic healing. She's just, I just can't wait to have this conversation. She also helped care for her mother who had Alzheimer's, and that is why she wrote the book. She lives in London, but she remains close to her Scottish roots, and she loves designing and making things. And, well, welcome, Maggie. Let's just get on with the conversation here. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you, Laurie. Thank you very much for inviting me on your show. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today, and you're doing such amazing work. It really is. I'm just about to follow through on something here in the UK that after corresponding with one of your speakers. So it's wonderful, really wonderful.
Oh, very cool. That's exciting to hear. We're all so interconnected, and it's just a wonderful way to connect. It amazes me how many people listen to the show and share information and make collaborations, which are critical to all of us to move care forward and to provide us comfort. And I think that's one of the lovely things that your book does. It just, the title alone is going to make people, step back. And even when I titled the program, I used the title and I said, yes, you read that right, because I know when I go out and speak, people go, what do you mean it's a gift? That's not possible. But it truly is, and so I'm anxious to talk about that. Can you give us a little background, as to what motivated you to write the book? I know you said your mom had dementia, but can you give us a little more insight there as to how it affected you? And
yeah, and I want to say right at the beginning, this show is perfect because it's Alzheimer's Speaks. And I'm just the messenger of what my mother said. So this is actually what I'm going to be saying is what Alzheimer's says. So to answer your question, I'll give you a little background. My family lived in Scotland and I lived in London, and I used to visit frequently. And my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in the year 2000 when she was 85. And I started visiting more frequently, so maybe for a week, once a month. My father was in his early 90s and struggling, and it was a very difficult time. I want to emphasize this because it sounds like, the gift of Alzheimer's. I may have been deluded about it, but I can assure you, we had a few years of real trauma with my mother. She would turn on the gas cooker and forget to light it, and she was a danger to herself and others. And our family house happened to be right next door to a care home. And we knew the care home. It was an independent care home, very nice, lovely staff, a wonderful owner. And when things got just too difficult at home, my mother went in there. But it was the easiest transition I think one could have, because I could look out of my window upstairs into the hall of the care home and see people moving around. So it felt as if she was more in an extension to our home, where she was safe first and foremost, and being lovingly cared for. So that was the start. It was, as I imagine most people feel, it was pretty traumatic when she went in there, and I knew she would never be, back home in her own familiar surroundings again. I went through all the sense of loss and that people go through. So it wasn't a gift at the beginning, that was for sure. And also, back in the year 2000, I don't know what it was like in the U.S., but Alzheimer's wasn't spoken about that much, and there wasn't all the information online that there is now. So I didn't really know what we were in for. I didn't know how long she was going to live. I didn't know what was going to happen in the disease. So I was just, I thought I was firefighting the whole way, and just dealing with things as they came up, and dealing with my dad as well. She had been in the care home for a couple of years. When I would say by this stage she was heading towards late stage Alzheimer's. I know it sounds a very fast transition. So I don't know whether she'd had Alzheimer's before and we hadn't recognized it, or whether she just progressed pretty quickly, once she got it. But she had reached the stage of, I call surrender, where she was no longer fighting to maintain control and denying things. So in some ways it was easier. And because she wasn't battling against everybody, it was much easier to have loving feelings towards her, and the staff absolutely adored her. And she'd been in the care home for about a year when she started to say things that I thought were interesting, maybe interesting to me because I'm a psychotherapist and, I want to know the meaning behind what people say. And it would have been so easy to have dismissed things she was saying. But I was alert and listening, and I started to write them down. And so one day she said, "You love me." And I thought, is this a question? Is it a statement? But I assured her that I did. And then immediately after that, she said, "I'm a bad person." And I thought, oh, poor Mum, she's so frail now. I felt real compassion for her. Mm-hmm. But I do at this stage need to tell you a little bit about her history because she had a really difficult life. She suffered from mental instability, depression. She threatened suicide on a number of occasions, and as a child, I was witness to that. And that meant that our relationship was quite challenging and, had been throughout our lives together. So when she said, "I'm a bad person," I thought, I wonder if my presence has triggered, memories of these difficult times in the past. And I could have said, "Have another cup of tea, Mum," but I didn't. I decided to stay with it and to, find out what was going on and talk through it in a very non-judgmental way. And this is where my NLP training was probably useful because your listeners might be interested in what I said to her. This is an NLP presupposition. It's easy to look back and wish we'd done something differently. But at the time, we do the best we can, given the circumstances. Otherwise, we'd have done something different. And it seemed that this was so forgiving that my mother was able to just take that on board and move on. And I was amazed at how that one statement, after just talking a little bit about the difficult times, saying that, freed her from these feelings that she had. But, these people say lots of strange things when they have Alzheimer's. And Carl Jung said, "Forgotten or repressed material surfaces in a state of diminished consciousness." And I think this could explain a lot of the strange things that people with, medium to late stage Alzheimer's say and do. And I think if we realize that that's what's happening, it's helpful.
Yep. I think that makes
yes.
just so much sense, and it allows us to release and not judge, and know that that everything has a reason, and everything is logical, even though it might not appear logical. Given the pathology and the way their mind is thinking, it makes perfect sense. And we just kind of have to put our investigative hat on and calm down and be a little patient. Things can surface. And I think we also have to get out of our box and be a little creative, because we're like, no, this belongs here and this belongs there. And so we don't allow the dots to connect naturally, which they, in my belief, is they most likely are. There is a very natural and normal connection, but we get so stuck in these patterns and these demands of daily living, and we're so we're taught to be forgiving. We're taught to feel guilty. We're taught to all the things you were talking about with your mom and stuff, of doing things right, and we as care partners fall into those patterns too. And to me, that was one of the biggest gifts my mom gave me, was letting go of all that crud that bogs us down. And it's just so beautiful. Did you find just kind of a peacefulness then, kind of within you and
very much
within
so.
her?
it also was helping to heal our relationship, and which hadn't, it had been okay, but it hadn't been wonderful. So it allowed us to start healing our relationship. And something that I found out subsequently, which I think was also interesting, is this has come from a neuroscientist called Professor Oliver Turnbull at Bangor University, UK. He carried out research into the memories of people with Alzheimer's, and he found that emotional memory doesn't die. Even when short-term memory has gone out of the window, emotional memory lives on, and that people with Alzheimer's continue to learn emotionally. Now, that was, he was bearing out what I'd already found. His research was published after I had written my book, or the first edition of my book. But I thought that's really interesting, and it's important to know that.
I think that's so true. I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. I saw that with my mom and so many others. And, we get trapped into, especially as the disease progresses in that end stage, that they're a shell of a body, and they're taking it all in, and they're just communicating in different ways, and we don't slow down enough to notice it, and to
absolutely
to read those nonverbal signs that are just, they're everywhere. Once you decide you're going to take the time to look for them, it's like you kind of slap yourself in the face and go, "How'd I miss all this? There's a lot of activity going on here," and it's kind of incredible. But it's such a gift, because when we slow down and we realize that we're so much more than a name, and that those emotional triggers are not just between us, but between every kind of living and breathing thing, and even those that aren't. It might be a photo of something. It could be music. It could be all kinds of different things that trigger those emotions. All of a sudden you realize how precious life is and how powerful joy can be, and that no matter what you're going through, it's still there. It's still there, but you're not going to find what you don't look for. And so to me, it's just kind of one of the things, like with the title of your book, I was so excited before I even had a chance to even go through it, was, we need to talk about these gifts because we've forgotten them in our society. And the lessons in this disease, to me, apply in all of life. And we can utilize them for so much more, and be so much calmer and peaceful, and live with gratitude even in a crisis. We can get through things graciously by accepting knowing we can't control it all. And go ahead.
A few weeks before my mother passed on, she said to me, "You talk to me. Nobody else talks to me." And that brought tears to my eyes, because the staff were very loving. Lots of people talked to her, but nobody talked to her in a way that was meaningful to her. And in order to do that, I had to kind of abandon me and my life. I had to move into her world with her. I had to explore her world, be curious and explore her world. And I didn't dismiss anything. It's like with Alzheimer's, meaning is it all. That's what people with Alzheimer's are looking for. They're looking for meaning. And if people can step onto their map, be with them, try and find the meaning in their communication, which mightn't be that easy, because often it's couched in metaphor, or the communication is tricky. One of the things that seems to happen is that we have filters in our brain. So we have a thought, the thought is filtered, and then we speak. So we don't speak exactly what we think. We would embarrass ourselves and people if we did. But people with Alzheimer's, these filters, because their brain cells are being damaged, these filters no longer work properly. So people are very direct. They have a thought and they speak, if they can still speak. And I think it's useful to, because when they say things like, my mother said to me, you have lovely teeth, you have lovely hair, and she said this over and over again. And at first I was slightly embarrassed at being told this, but, I just realized that that's what she was saying, and to accept it graciously.
Yeah, and we don't accept those things. I mean, we don't accept compliments, most of us just don't. We don't deal with that. And they're given in such a sincere fashion, and they're so authentic, and we're looking at, what do you really want? Because that's how we deal in the real world. It's like, okay, you're coming at me with that, you want something else, and that's gone because it's just not that deep. It's just there. It's just honest, and and it's so beautiful, so beautiful.
I would like to say something too about empathy. People who have Alzheimer's, I'll give you a little background to this. Neuroscientists at the University of California, San Francisco Memory and Aging Center carried out some research on people with Alzheimer's, and they found that as cognition decreases, empathy increases. And the more people's brain cells die off, the more empathetic they become. That means they are ultra-sensitive to the nuances of our facial expressions, our moods, our feelings, even if we're not saying anything. And furthermore, it goes to the next stage is, when they take this in from us, they mimic it back to us, and the jargon is emotional contagion. So they are empathetic to the people, and the environment they're in. They take it in, and then they feed it back to us. And that could explain some of the things that my mother said. I've never seen such love coming from anybody's eyes. She was feeling love coming from my eyes. And then she said, love is passing between us. So she knew it was coming and going between us. And the beautiful thing here is, if we are genuinely compassionate and loving, our loved ones with Alzheimer's will know that.
Yep.
And they'll feel it. And they will feed, and they will send it back to us. And in that way, we can get into a most beautiful symbiotic relationship in which love just grows and grows.
That's very true. One of the lessons that I learned, and it sounds like you did too, and I call it different levels of unconditional love. I didn't know there were so many levels. And as she went deeper into the disease, it drew me deeper into these levels of unconditional love that were just so profound. Just so, I didn't think I could love somebody at the level that I love my mom, at the end. Yeah. But she just pulled me in. And I mean, I've always been a very passionate, person, and I have always loved very deeply. But this just transcended anything really in this like physical world, because it just became a spiritual process, really, and has had me connected on so many more levels that I just didn't even know existed, and never would have had that without her going through this process, this disease, and huge gift to be able to have.
I absolutely share that experience too. And I'd like to say something about the kind of spiritual journey, because I would say that love was at the heart of it. Early on, I think I said, I told you, my mum said, you love me. And then she said, I'm a bad person, and we processed that. Then I'm also trained as a healer. So every now and then I would send her healing energy, and she always noticed it. Even, I wasn't saying anything. She just picked it up and made some comment. And on one occasion early on, I was sending her energy, and she said, when you see little bits flying around, you'll know it's me. And I thought, oh, she's talking about her non-physical energy. And then I thought, oh, is that when she's dead? And then she said, I'm not dead yet. So she was actually picking up my thoughts as well. And I think, although the neuroscientists have talked about emotional contagion, I actually think contagion is happening at other levels as well. And I've written a little bit about that in my book. And then she said something very interesting, not to me, very interesting. She said, it's difficult working between two worlds. This is right at the beginning. And I thought, wow, a medical doctor would have dismissed that as a hallucination. She was delusional. Yep. But I've been a long-term, seeker of consciousness, from my mid-20s and meditator. And so when she said this, I was really interested. And that, for me, that was the real beginning of our journey. And I had no idea where this was going to take me. But if I had dismissed that, and there would have been no story. It was my acceptance, my validation of her experience, and that's something I think is really important, is validating people's experience. It's real for them. Even if it's not real for us, it's real for them. For me, it was what I wanted to be real for me. I was not as advanced as my mother was, when it came to this. So she also said she said, relatives visit me, they help me. Now, this is often a sign that people are close to the end of their lives, their physical life on Earth. Research has shown that people usually, when they start saying that, they're either hours, days, or at the most maybe a week away from the end. So I thought, and she said, is it all right if I go? And I rather pathetically said yes, because I didn't want her to hang on for me. Little did I know that for 3.5 years, we were going to be talking about the other world. So that was just the beginning of our journey.
Wow.
I
That's
think
incredible.
that because I had some, knowledge about the other world from my reading and my study and my meditation and my experience, I was able to hold a safe space for her to, drift into and come back again. Because when people reach this stage, this late stage of Alzheimer's, they have altered states of consciousness from time to time. And where do they go when they are in these altered states? I have a hypothesis that the more I talk about it to people, the more I think this is really what's happening. When people reach this stage of surrender and their ego has gone out of the window, they've lost their sense of self, the part of the brain that processes linear time isn't working anymore, so past and future are all rolled into the present. If you are in the present, in the now, without an ego, what kind of state are you in? You're in a transcendental state, according to Eckhart Tolle. And his book, The Power of Now, is all about that. And he continues in his presentation to talk about letting the ego go and being totally present in the now. And I think that people with Alzheimer's, because they have Alzheimer's, because their brain isn't interfering and chatting away, all the time and distracting them, they actually have the opportunity, when in altered states, to go into an altered state like this.
Well, and and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they they talk about young children. We unteach them, to be in
Yeah.
that state. They are so connected, and then we set up the rules and we tell them what's right or wrong, and we implement. You have to have the filters. I mean, there's just all this stuff that we think we have to live by, and because young kids do things too that don't always make a lot of sense to us, but in fact a friend of mine just sent, I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was over in London, and it was a movie about the fairies, the two little girls that saw the fairies in the woods, and they took a picture and they actually captured them, and they found out that they were really authentic and stuff. And so my little granddaughter, we watched that probably 4 or 5 times over the weekend. She's just fascinated with that. And but yet as adults we say that's not real, that can't happen, all of those types of things. And I saw the same thing with my mom. I always felt when she would be talking that she was talking to somebody else in a different realm, because she was so calm and she was so comfortable, and it was such a normal conversation that she was having.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm sure there are people that will argue with that, but for me, I found peace in that. I just found peace wherever she found calmness. And if somebody wants to label it a hallucination, have at it if that's what makes them comfortable. That's not what I'm going to call it, and I don't want to treat it like that. I didn't want to drug her up, to make that go away, because it wasn't harming anybody, and it actually was peaceful for her. I mean, there were times she would. I talk about one time when she was nibbling some corn. They had a picnic at the nursing home she was at, and of course, me as the adult looking at her broken, rotted teeth, go, "Do you want me to cut the kernels off the corn for you?" And she looked at me like I was crazy. And she said no. And she sat there and she sucked on that corn on the cob, and there was nothing left to it. She was so peaceful. And I remembered watching her literally for 15 minutes just wanting to be wherever she was, because she was so in that moment and so peaceful and so happy. And I don't know if it was at a state fair when she was a small kid or what, but it was like that, I think the sense of that corn just brought her back in time, kind of that emotional connection you were talking about before. And I just remember standing there melting, going, "I want what she has," because it was such a lesson for me to not judge, that exterior of what somebody wants, and we're really good at judging what somebody wants by how they appear, which is such a mistake to do with this disease. And it's just a very, very interesting process. But if you go into, I think, the mode, and it's like you said earlier, you don't just waltz in going, "This is a gift." I mean, there's some hard times. There's hard times for the person diagnosed. There's hard times for those who love and care for them. But if you can go in with the attitude, this helped me, of what can I learn? What can I learn from this? And so every time I felt I was backed into a corner and maybe I was getting frustrated, I would ask, "What's my lesson?" And there was always a lesson. And it was a beautiful lesson. And then it turned into this gift of a life lesson. And then it made me calmer, and it made my mom much more comfortable, because they feed off our emotions, and so it's just, it really is such an incredible process. And if people would just slow down and accept it, instead of judging that, well, this isn't how I planned my life. Well, you know what? Nothing really comes out the way we planned our life anyways, for the most part. There's bumps in the road, and this one is a big one. But what a great process.
One of the things that I noticed with my mother, she used to stare at me. And because her brain had slowed down, these staring sessions would get longer and longer. And I decided to try and be totally present with her and just maintain that eye contact, which was often difficult. You know, I had a busy life. I was zooming between London and Scotland and looking after my dad. And it was, and sometimes I'd arrive and I'd be really buzzing, and she'd say, "You're rushing." And then, but we had many of these just silent, they're like sessions. When she just looked at me and I remained in eye contact with her. And on one occasion she said, "Call me the cleanser." And I thought,
oh, wow,
that's exactly what it feels like. I mean, she did go into another world. When she was in this altered state, she spoke with a voice of absolute authority. When she wasn't, when she was in this, in her earthly, physical body, she complained. She didn't like lying there and not being able to, do things. And her voice would be feeble. But in the other world, she spoke with a voice of authority. Would you like me to tell you some of the things she said?
Please.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seemed that she said, "Television is amazing. I can ask all my questions." Well, a couple of things there. One, you have to know what questions to ask. And she seemed to know what questions to ask. But having spoken to some psychics subsequently, about this, they describe when they are receiving information. They say it's like watching a television set. And I think that my mother was describing her portal to the other world. She said things like, "I have a first aid box. I can go to it at any time and get what I need." And when I asked her how she did that, she said, "I ask them." It's that simple.
Wow.
She also described something, this may be outside the realms of some of the listeners, but she described something that sounded to me like psychic surgery or, energy healing. She said she'd had a big operation. This is near the beginning, and I thought, well, she hadn't had a physical operation, that was for sure. And I said, "Well, where have you had an operation?" She said, "My mind." She said, "They've taken things out. They're very skillful." Now, this is at the beginning, and I was a little wary about what she was saying. But she told me this quite a few times, over the years. And each time she said, "I'm getting better." And I can assure you that at a non-physical level, she was getting better. When she had, she became very lucid. She developed the gift of extrasensory perception. And I think for me, the evidence that it wasn't just delusional, the things she was telling me, was on at least 8 occasions, she told me things about myself that I hadn't told her and that she couldn't possibly have known. And I could give you a few examples of these. I mean, on one occasion, I had made a card for her for Mother's Day, and I put 12 red roses on it, and "Sorry, I can't be with you on Mother's Day, but see you soon." A week or two later, I was up there, and I was looking around her room for this card, and I couldn't see it. I hadn't said anything to her about it. And she said to me, "The lost roses." I was just stunned because she had picked up the image that I had in my mind, but not only that, the fact that it was lost. So in a way, it showed me nothing was lost. The physical card wasn't there, but she knew about it. So it wasn't lost. And I thought this was quite a useful metaphor for what was happening between us. And she had lots of psychic experiences. She had life reviews. She said, I'm remembering all my life, all the people, and I helped her to process that. She had described what to me sounded like an out-of-body experience. She said, my head's not attached to my body. So, she was actually able to speak these words, but feel something quite different. What else did she said she heard voices. She said she had to wait for messages to come through. She told me that everything that she was telling me had come from my sister, who had passed on a few years before, and who, an aside here, my sister had a very difficult life. She had been an alcoholic and died prematurely. So, this was a bit of quite a revelation to hear that my sister was passing all this information on to my mother. She was talking what sounded like past lives. I don't know which century, she said. Relatives visit me. They help me. She seemed to be, she was learning. It's hard to believe this. And I realized that she's probably quite an exceptional case. Not everybody's going to have these experiences. But she talked a few times about wanting to be in the right position. I'm getting ready for the next program. I need to decide which program. So she had phases when she had, I think through her television, she got information and also asked questions. She described having test supervision and having tests, and then moving on to the next program. And she just seemed to get wiser and wiser. So her physical body was, failing terribly. I mean, she couldn't turn in bed. She couldn't support herself sitting up. Her physical body was deteriorating. And often, when she wasn't in an altered state, she would repeat things or just sleep. But then intermittently, these powerful, words and declarations would come through. And she had a very, very clear idea of her own death. She said, she had a preview of her death. She said, we're learning we're immortal. Death is nothing to be afraid of. I have no worries, no fears. And then she told me about a dream. She said, it's the climax, it's the end, it's peaceful. And just very near the end, she said, I'm counting the months. And I knew then that this was near the end, because she hadn't spoken like that before. And then she said, I've entered the first stage. And I said, how many stages are there? She said, 7. And told me, she said, you are in the presence of kings and queens.
Wow.
So at some level, she was tuned into somewhere else.
Wow. When my mom died, and my listeners have heard this, some of them before, she actually came to me in dreams. So she told me to start writing her obituary. She told me I was not going to be there when she was dying, that I needed to be away. I needed to keep speaking. She needed to pull the family together. She had it all orchestrated. And when she left,
amazing.
I was in Arizona. I was there. I set up, she was already on hospice and stuff, but I kind of got everything in order, and the family pulled together, and I participated via FaceTime on video chat, and I was able to read my mom and guide my family so that they could physically help. And it would have been totally different if I would have been there, because it was such a beautiful process. And I actually, I always say that my mom is always with me when I work, because this is our thing together. And when I got up on stage for the first presentation, right before it was like 10 minutes before, I said, okay, 10, 15 minutes to showtime. I expect you up there with me. And I got up on stage, and I felt a surge of energy. I almost fell. It was so powerful. And I looked up, and everything was just bright lights. and kind of orbs floating around, and then I centered myself and did my talk, and everything was fine. And I got done, and I called back, and my daughter said, "Mom, it was the strangest thing." She said, "When you told Grandma 15 minutes to showtime, her body heated up and she got beet red, and she did not cool down until you were done and you called back." She said, and it took me probably 15 minutes to get back on the phone again. And she said it was just, 10, 15 minutes before you called, her body cooled down again, and she's back.
Amazing.
And it really was. I mean, and people can think whatever they want on that, but to me, I believe my mom's energy was with me. And
I'm sure it was.
And I think, everyone in the room witnessed it, and there was probably 20 people in the room with her, because the whole family was there, and they couldn't believe it. And we had different things occur. Like one time I said, "What's that smell in the room?" And I said, "Something's changed." And they're like, "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, "I don't know. Something's changed. What's going on?" And my daughter said, "Well, they just brought in lavender, washcloth for her." They're like, "How did you know that?" And I'm like, I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't know. I don't really care how I know. I sometimes I know those things. That's just how close my mom and I were. And people are like that in this realm too. I mean, we finish each other's sentences. We pick something up at the store just because we know somebody needs it or wants it, without ever communicating verbally. And yet we're surprised, when this happens, when someone is ill. But we do it all the time. We are connected, but we take it for granted. And I think when there's an illness, it brings us closer. If you don't mind, I would love to pull in. I see Harry Urban is on the line, and Harry is diagnosed with dementia. I would love to just hear what his thoughts are on our conversation. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. Harry, are you on the line there? What are you thinking of this conversation?
I think it's wonderful. You were talking about this outer state that we go into, and it's true, we do. And the sad part of it is, though, that it is comforting to us, but doctors try to give us medication to block us from going there. That's the sad part of it. And it really breaks my heart, that if I'm sitting there and I'm in a daze or I'm in another place, just let me go. Let me enjoy what I have. Don't try to bring me out of it and anything else, because you're stopping me from enjoying my life.
Well, one of the comments Harry made, and I say this just about every time I speak, I quote him because it's one of my favorite sayings, but he says, I used to like to relax before I got dementia. I still do. And so it's okay if I'm sitting quiet, and it's such a basic thing. And our minds all drift off. We daydream. You can call it whatever you want. And as your beliefs change or your mind opens, you might call it different things than what we used to call it. But it's about finding that peacefulness. And does it really make any difference what we call it or where we go, no matter who we are, if we're not hurting anybody else, But it's about allowing people to have that sense of peace and that centeredness. And when I would look at my mom in that quiet state, Carrie, that you're talking about, she was so strong in terms of, when I would look at her, she was peaceful, she was strong, and yet she was so calm. But you just got this sense of well-being, and why we want to disrupt that is beyond me.
Well, I think this is where family can play a role with the people looking after their loved ones. I mean, I can remember This is with my father, who was in a care home after my mother. And I arrived one time and found him almost comatose. And I said to the staff, what has happened to him? His medical doctor thought he was depressed and doubled some medication he was on. And I got a second doctor to come in who took him off immediately, and within a few hours, my father was back to his normal state again. So I think, I certainly kept a really close eye on what was being given to both my parents to make sure that they could be comfortable in the state that they were in.
Mhm. Very important stuff. I was hoping, Harry, that you were going to comment on that quiet state, because I figured you would have a comment on that, and I just think it's so important for people to hear the voice of people with dementia and to take it seriously. It's so critical, because even Maggie and I, we've been through this journey, but we're still outsiders looking in, giving it our best guess, on a lot of levels is how we're going to be perceived. But when we can talk to people that actually have the disease, that can say, yeah, that is what's going on, or no, not quite. I would look at it like this. I think adds even more value to the conversation for people. So I thank you very much, Harry, for making a comment. Was there anything else that you wanted to comment on?
Yeah, I think most people try to pull us back into their world because they don't understand ours. Like that peaceful state that you're talking about, that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. If they see us sitting in a chair staring into space, they have all these horrible thoughts in their mind, and they try to draw us back out of that. And it's so bad because my friend Mike Good, he says it perfectly. He says, "Don't do things for me, do them with me." So if I'm in that quiet spot, join me in it. See what I'm seeing, feel what I'm feeling, things like that. When I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I was given a basket full of gifts. Now it's up to me if I choose to see them and use them, But the gifts are there. So many times, one of the best gifts I was given was the gift of forcing me to slow down. Okay, because once I was forced to slow down, I saw life completely different than anybody else. And I'm going to be honest with you, I like my life. I like living with my Alzheimer's the way I am now.
Well, that's good, but you're at that peaceful state. You're not fighting it. You're going with it, and you've really, from my view of it, I have seen you just get so empowered by becoming an advocate, and instead of, what happens to most is, it's depressing at first. It's a shock to the system, but you and so many others have embraced it and said, we can make the world better. We need to talk about this disease, and it's just, Harry's just so full of great information. It's very fun. He's one of our experts on dementia chats, and so I thank you so much for joining us today, Harry, and for your comments. So I want to get back.
I would like to thank Harry too. I really, really appreciate hearing his voice.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Great. Maggie, we've got about a minute left. We can talk longer, needless to say. But I want to make sure that we get everything in that you want to talk about. This has just, to me, been such a fascinating conversation, and I love the experiences that you're sharing. I think again, not everybody may agree with what you've said or what I've said or even what Harry has said, But we need to have these conversations. That's the only way we open doors to possibilities and in changing mindsets. And, and this is a disease that we don't know anything about it. We really don't. And so we have to work together, and we have to, I think, listen to all voices and develop a toolkit that works for us, because there is no magic bullet that's going to fix this. And I really think, for me personally, my belief is this disease is here to teach this world new lessons. I think we've gotten so far.
I was just going to say that.
Really, we have gotten so far out of skew that we don't even know the meaning, and we've lost the beauty of life. And this disease brings it back home on such minute levels of things that we overlook because we're too fast. We're moving too fast and we're too busy and stuff. And so, I really would encourage our audience to buy this book, The Gift of Alzheimer's, New Insights into the Potential of Alzheimer's and Its Care. You have some really cool things. You kind of diary some things out by dates. And, like here you say, I've been here for a few days and I've been visiting Mom regularly. And you talk about the conversations. You noticed Mom's speech was a little less clear due to the muscles in her mouth not working so well. And then you go on and ask certain questions, and you always find kind of this little peacefulness in just these really simple conversations, Hi, how are you? Mm-hmm. I'm fine. What are you thinking? Nothing. Is that all right? Yeah. What are you feeling? Nothing. No pain? Nope. Just fine, And we don't accept that. We always think the mind has to be like clutching on to something deep and dark and big, and sometimes there's just nothing there. It's just you're just absorbing everything and being fine with what's around you. And I mean, what a lesson that is in itself, of just letting go. So beautifully written, and lots of great examples, and I think things to ponder and to just make us look at the world a little bit different. And, I think when we can attach, you talked about the emotional piece for those with dementia, but I think that's very true for us as a society, that we don't shift our mindsets until we feel the need. And I think your book is going to make people feel the need. I think it's going to touch them in ways that may surprise them, and have them just go, well, why can't I try this? And to move out of that lane of failure and be motivated by trying new things and experimenting and having fun with the process, instead of worrying about, is it right, is it wrong? I think it's worse for us to do nothing because we're afraid to fail, and nothing at all. But what else would you like to share with our audience? I know I could have you here all day. I could have you here all week, actually.
Well, I think looking at the big picture, Alzheimer's is a protracted end-of-life experience. End-of-life experience is usually a term that's used when people are terminally ill or very near to the end of life. But Alzheimer's stretches over years, and that gives us the opportunity to engage in it as an intelligent process, to engage in the process of conscious dying with a person. When people are not well, often we don't have time to do that, but Alzheimer's gives us the perfect opportunity to do that. It's also, people with Alzheimer's speak with love from the heart. It's direct. It's unfiltered. And we can be in that loving space with them. And that means there's the opportunity to heal relationships like, my mom and I did. So it's never too late to heal the past. It's actually an opportunity. And the other world, if you put in quotes, other world experiences that people with Alzheimer's They are happy in that place. It's love. There's no fear and no pain. And my mother said, love is what it is. The stillness of deep love. I can't find words to describe it. Death is nothing to be afraid of. I love everyone. And love never dies.
The stillness of, did you say great love or true love?
The stillness of deep love.
Of deep love. I love that.
Yes, and it made, there were times like that, I just felt that time stopped.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so beautiful. And then after she said, I want you to experience it. So she was just teaching me, it's not just about the words, it's about feeling it. Wow.
Yeah, she really was so connected in terms of teaching. I and I don't know if you get asked this, but a lot of times people just think, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through this, and I just tell people, I'm okay with this. This was the biggest gift I'll probably ever receive in my life.
I know, my parents are always saying you need some retail therapy or something.
Yeah.
You don't realize this is one of the most profound things in my life. It's changed my life. Mm-hmm. It's really changed my life.
Yeah, how you look at it, who you are. It's so beautiful, but people are so fearful of it, and I think they need to hear that message of the beauty and the gifts, because no matter what we go through, there is beauty and there is gifts to be had, but we can't find what we're not looking for, and so if we want to stay in a state of denial and not deal with what's before us, well, that's where we're going to live, and we're not going to have any opportunity to connect or be authentic or, to find joy. And it's just so important for us to do. One of the lessons, Mom taught me, which was really simple, was, again, we were talking about being in the now, was, we have three choices in our life. We can live in the past, we can live in the future, we can live in the now. And I always ask my audiences, what do you want in your life? Do you want tears? Do you want fears? Or do you want joy? And the tears are usually living in the past for what we lost, because we don't typically look at the past in gratitude. We look at it as loss. And when we look at the future, it scares us, and so we live in fear. And most of what we fear never comes to be. And if we live in either of those worlds, we miss the present, and that's where the joy is. And so,
absolutely,
when I look at it in those three things, everyone's like, well, I want the joy. Well, then you have to consciously care to be in the present. You have to let go of the others, knowing that you can't control either side. One hasn't happened, and one has already played out. So, control what you can, love what you can, and learn the gifts that are right before you. And it's so peaceful and so calming if you can get there, if you will allow yourself to accept the gift that's before you. I think that's the biggest thing I notice in me, is just the calmness and the peacefulness, where I would take another situation. 10, 15 years ago, I would have been a basket case, worrying about all kinds of stuff. But the gift through the disease has given me a calmness to work through it more graciously in life. And your book is just, one lesson upon the other, with this. Do you have one last quote that you would like to give people?
Well, I'd like to repeat the last one, which was love never dies.
Very true. Very, very true. And that's a beautiful thing too, that for people to understand the connectiveness through this process. I feel way connected to my mom still, even though she's gone. I would imagine you feel the same with yours.
I do, and I have. She comes to me in dreams.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's amazing, and just about everyone I've talked to through this process with the disease, most people say that. But we don't want to admit it. We don't want to admit it ahead of time or something. I guess that it's possible. It's kind of interesting, but we are so much more than just a name or a physical body. We're connected. We're connected at such deep levels. I'll share one other story that kind of brings that point home too. When I speak, I talk about that I believe that we are connected consciously and unconsciously as soon as we're in the womb, as soon as we're conceived. Mm-hmm. And people always say, well, how can that be? And I'll say, how many bellies have you patted and how many tummies have you talked to? We're planning, we're talking, we're playing music, we're setting routines. We're connected on so many levels. Just in the womb, before this baby pops out into this real world, and there's an excitement, and there's planning, and there's a future, and I think that stays with us through this world and can, if we allow it, go on after somebody passes, because the world is so much bigger, I think, than what we know of it. There's a whole spiritual level that we're all connected on, and no matter what religion or what your beliefs are, most people believe in a power greater than them. And I'm not going to judge what that is, but I think that connectiveness, that spirituality allows us to be connected in different ways. And I don't know if you believe that or not, but that's just kind
absolutely, I do. And before I had this experience with my mother, I was a believer, but every now and then I'd have a little nagging doubt. Mm-hmm. And my experience with her has completely changed that. Mm-hmm. It's not a question of it's not a question of believing. I know I don't have any doubts now. She taught me that, and that was mm-hmm. one of her gifts to me, for which I'm most grateful. Because when you know that, you can live life without fear.
Yep. Yeah, that really is. I guess I never looked at it like that, but yeah, that's very true for myself as well. That there, even though if I go into a lapse, it isn't very. I don't go very far, and I'm pulled right back out, knowing how connected we are. Where before I could kind of jump off the cliff, and do the woe is me, and I'm all alone. But I just rarely feel alone, and that's just so neat to still be able to communicate. But through the disease, through those later stages when they have to communicate different, I think is where the training for us really comes into play, of learning to communicate on a different level, and that quietness allows us to go there where our world is so busy. We normally don't allow that time. Like Carrie was saying, just to be quiet. Well, this has just been a fascinating talk. You can go to Maggie's two websites. One is the Gift of Alzheimer's.com, and the other is her name. And Maggie, I'm going to have you pronounce your last name because I'm not sure I was pronouncing it correctly.
It's La Tourelle.
La Tourelle. Oh yes, I was not pronouncing it as fancy, and it sounds much more beautiful the way you say it, La Tourelle. So that is Maggie, Maggie, and La Tourelle is LATOURELLE. And both of those are .coms. The Gift of Alzheimer's and Maggie La Tourelle. Both are in the chat box and on the website and also on the blog. Again, highly encourage you to pick up this brand new book that just hit the U.S., The Gift of Alzheimer's. So thank you so much for being part of our show today, and this has been fascinating talking to you, Maggie. I really appreciate your time, and I know it's late over there compared to here in the U.S. You're over in London today, is that where you're at?
Yes.
Yep, so yeah, probably.
And I want to thank you, Laurie, for inviting me on the show. That I didn't realize there's just so much that we've shared on this, and it's lovely to have that experience of sharing things that we have in common. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you the things that have been important to me, and to say, share what my mum has told us.
Yep, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pull Harry in and just see too if he has any last minute comments here. Harry, anything you would like to say?
I'm just so happy that professionals and the medical professions are now confirming what we've been saying. So we're teaching and everybody else is learning, and it just makes me so happy.
That's good. Well, keep up the great work, Harry. Harry will be with us on Dementia Chats this afternoon. That's 3 o'clock Eastern Time and 2 o'clock Central, 1 Mountain, noon Pacific, and I think that's 8 o'clock London time. So we would love to have you join us. You can go to Alzheimer Speaks to the About page to get that link, or you can go to the blog as well and click on that article, or to Dementia Chats on Facebook. The links are abound there. Thank you again so much, Maggie. Appreciate having you with us. If you missed our last radio show, we talked about the Droplet, which is a new technology for reminders, which is quite fascinating. They're doing a crowdfunding program, but you should listen to it. There's a video you can also go to as well to learn more about it, but it's called the Droplet. On the blog, I didn't do a lot of writing this past week since I was traveling. I was down in Pennsylvania and Lancaster for the Pennsylvania Assisted Living Association Conference, which was just an absolutely wonderful time. Lots of people down there very interested in joining the Purple Angel Project and dementia-friendly communities, so it was very much an honor to speak with them. I did write one post, and it was just Mother's Day takes new meaning once dementia hits, and I just talked briefly about the journey with my own mother. Again, I'd like to remind you to check out the Alzheimer's studies, and we need people to take these trials. There's a real quick survey that can be taken. There's a link on the web page, and even if you go to alzheimersspeaks.com, you'll see that on the home page as well. For those of you that aren't aware, there's a new organization in the U.S. called Dementia Action Alliance, and you might want to check out their website. It's daanow.org, daanow.org. And then don't forget about the Lewy Body Association and the Frontal Temporal Lobe and the National Aphasia Association if you're dealing with specific types of dementia. You may also want to check out Rock with Dementia with Wayne Mesker. He's working very closely with the Purple Angel Project, and they're looking at doing some music fests around the world for dementia, and so that's kind of an exciting time. I want to do last shout out to Puzzle With Me and Jiminy Wicket and the Alzheimer's Music Connect. Big believer in music and the power behind it when it comes to dementia. We will talk to you next week. Have a blessed week, and thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to check into Maggie La Tourelle's new book, The Gift of Alzheimer's. And again, that just hit the U.S. today. So fascinating conversation. Please feel free to share it so others can listen as well. Thank you so much. Bye now.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sylvester here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.